Hey, everyone. This is Don McCauley. I'm the president and founder of Barbary Law Preview. Some of you guys might have had me this summer as part of the Pipeline to Practice scholarship program. And we're on the phone with Kwesi Atakra. Did I get it right, Kwesi? I always shudder when I have to pronounce your full name. Really? Did I really?
It's exactly right. Yeah.
Well,
hello,
we were
everyone.
Supposed to have
good evening.
So Kwesi's an attorney down in at Potter Anderson down in Delaware, and we were supposed to have another attorney who sits on our board as well. Kwesi sits in the Pipeline to Practice Foundation board of directors, as well as Ruki Tijani. But I don't know. Did you see the email traffic, Kwesi? She got pulled away on a matter, which is, I guess, the problem of working for a large firm like Quinn Emanuel. You know?
Yes, I did see that.
That happens. That happens often. But the good thing for you guys who are listening in, hopefully from the comfort of your own home and your pajamas and your bunny slippers, is that we'll have a lot of opportunities for you guys to ask questions. So if you haven't done this already with us, there's a question box, so you can just type in your question, and we'll hit it. But as of right now, Kwesi, why don't we just have you introduce yourself, give a little bit of background about who you are, where you went to school, and what your practice is like.
Sounds good. So again, my name is Kwesi Atakra. As maybe you can tell from my name, I'm originally from Ghana, West Africa. I came to the United States about 18 years ago for college. I studied accounting and finance at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. Then I ended up staying in Iowa for a good 16 years, the last 3 of which I decided to go to law school, study law at the University of Iowa College of Law. And I always was interested in business accounting related, and I thought I could leverage that off with a JD. And so 2 years ago, I moved from Iowa to Delaware, where I practice corporate litigation, primarily in the Court of Chancery, if any of you are familiar with the Court of Chancery in Delaware. And I'm in the corporate litigation group here in Delaware at Potter Anderson, and I've been, practicing for a couple of years now. So I have 2 boys, 2 years old and 8 months, and I'm happily married. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, so Kwesi, before we even jump in, I think even more fascinating than the topic of preparing for your first semester exams is how the hell do you get from Ghana to Iowa? Like, why Iowa?
So for some reason,
did you just throw a dart at
No, I did
an
not.
I
did not.
Iowa.
So
sounds great.
So I knew a lot. I did some investigation and research, and I knew a lot about Drake University, like the school itself.
Yeah.
I knew a lot about the school and not a lot about Iowa. And so I ended up, and there were I had a couple of friends already at Drake, and so I ended up going into a school that I knew about, but not much about the state. So you can imagine when it started snowing, my first time seeing snow, that first experience was pretty interesting, to say the least.
Or, aren't there mountains in Ghana too? Like, were you just wait a minute, hold on, it's flat.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I did.
Well,
but you know what?
Good example, guys, of being an informed consumer. All right, before you make any kind of crazy ass life choices like moving to Iowa. All right.
But I think. Just to say something real quick, and I think this is important to those listening. So I come from a pretty humble background, and I always tell people, especially students, if I don't think I've made it, but at least I've gone through law school, and I think I did pretty well, and I'm, practicing at a decent firm, and if I can make it, like anyone can. It just takes hard work. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there.
Dude, honestly, I feel the same way about myself. But I think you're underselling yourself by saying Potter Anderson is a decent firm. It's a phenomenal firm. For those of you guys who who are out there and haven't really compared notes among big law firms, especially in the area of corporate law. It's a top-notch firm. So don't undersell yourself, Quessy. But you're a little too humble. I'll tell you, I don't even know if you even know my background, but Quessy, but I sit on the as an advisor to the Pipeline to Practice Foundation. I have found it. I am probably the luckiest guy you'll ever meet in your life because if you ask any of my friends or family as to what I should be doing right now, it's certainly not teaching law students, and it's probably certainly not being an attorney who passed the bar exam and worked at a large law firm myself. I went to law school entirely academically untested. I really didn't apply myself. I was the classic underachiever. Played a lot of wiffle ball. I had a great time, 4 years of college, and I thought I would extend it to 3 years of law school. When I got out with a history major, like what the hell am I going to do with that? At least accounting background, you could do something with that. So I mean, you're smarter than me in that respect. But then I went to law school, and I went to law school, and I found I did really, really well my first year of law school, and it really did change my life. So I ended up number 4 in my class after my first year. Went and got the big job in Manhattan, and realized that there's probably a better way of spending my time, than making rich companies richer. So I founded a law school prep course and got really heavily involved in the diversity movement, which sort of brought me to Pipeline to Practice, which I love. I absolutely love. This is probably one of my favorite entities that I actually work with. So that's just a little bit about me. And in Quessy, I echo that. If I can do it, trust me. I've got people in my life who are shocked that I did it, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. All right, but that lends to making sure that you're doing well your first year, and you're ultimately you kick ass and you make sure that you're in the position to really knock it out of the park, because first year grades are really, guys, all that matters. And anybody who took law preview this summer, I know we beat that into your head, but I just can't express enough how important and how impactful those first year grades are. Not that they won't be outcome determinative for you for the rest of your life. You guys will have good lives, and you'll practice law, and you'll make money. But what the first year's grades will definitely do to you, or do for you, I should say, is definitely set a different trajectory of your professional career, and allow you to finish your first year with options, which is really the goal of going to law school. I mean, unless you guys are trust fund babies and decided to go to law school just for the academic exercise of it, the outcome of law school and the return on your investment is getting a job. And the difference between doing well in your first year versus not doing well is, having options and, having options thrust upon you. And you definitely want to be in the position of the latter, where you have, in the former, where you have options set forth before you, whether it's to go and get the big law job at Potter Anderson, or to clerk, or maybe transfer law schools, whatever you'd like. You get one bite at this apple, and the first year grades are really going to be determinative of that. So to that end, let's jump into to a talk about how to prepare for your first semester exams. So we're now about 6 weeks away from the start of the exam week, which is usually right after Thanksgiving, beginning first or second week of December. And Quessy, when you were, you're still young enough to remember. I have more gray hair than you, so you're still young enough to remember back to your first year of law school, unless you're unless you blocked it out like sort of I did, or many people do. Where were you at this point in the semester during your first semester of fall?
Right. Okay. So before I answer that question, I just want to throw it out there, and Don, you may disagree with what I'm going to say, but when it comes to, I guess, giving advice about law school and how to take the exams and how to basically cope with the stresses of law school, my take on it is everybody has their way of going about it. And you're going to hear what I'm going to have to say. You're going to hear what Don is going to have to say. You may have other friends or family that have gone to law school and may tell you one thing or the other. I think everyone has their own way of studying and doing well on exams. And so, and more importantly, you guys know yourselves. Like, you're smart enough to have gotten into law school. You did well in college, and you're going to do well in law school. And I think the things that got you here, like, I feel like there's a core foundation character or principle or something that you know in yourself that you went by to get you here. And I think you shouldn't, irrespective of what I tell you or what anybody tells you, you should keep that, and I don't know what it is. Like, for me, that core thing for me is I try to study material and repeat that material over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now, that may be memorizing the material, but in doing that, it helps me better understand the material. And I've never, gone away from doing that. And so whatever I say, I think you guys should take what you want from it, and not necessarily do exactly what I say from A to Z, but take that advice, and to the extent that you think you can apply it to those core principles that you have, then do that. But I'm in no way going to tell you to change what you've done so far that has gotten you where you are today. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there. And Don, again, you may disagree with that comment, but I wanted to say that.
Yeah, no. So, listen, I will. I'm gonna come right back at you and say I sort of do disagree with it, to a certain extent. And let me say this. There are certain skill sets that you need as a 1L that you didn't exercise as a college senior or college junior, right? Which is or throughout your academic undergraduate career, which is what got you to law school, right? That said, you have to use those skill sets and develop those skill sets, and whether it's outlining and whether it's briefing your cases or preparing for class. But when it comes to the actual studying, I actually do agree with you. I think that you don't abandon everything that you did up until this point simply because you're in law school. And we talk about that when we talk about the attack outline later on in the discussion. What I view the attack outline after you've actually done the outlining material is whatever you relied on, whatever skills you relied on as an undergrad. Whether it was flashcards or whether it was flowcharts or whether it was timelines or whatever it took for you guys to memorize dense material. That's what you should fall back on at the very, very end. But up until that point, I think that you really do have to you sort of have to exercise a different set of mental muscles, whether it be creating an outline, and that or taking practice exams, things that you work with. I know that I used to work with the flashcard series, and I recommend that law preview students do that right from the very first week of school because it's that repetition, right? It's that what is a battery? Okay, test me on give me hypotheticals behind testing where the rules of every element of a battery survives or fails. So I actually agree with you in some respects, but I also feel like some of the stuff, like you're not in Iowa anymore. Let's put it that way. So like in law school, it's not like you do have to develop a certain set of new skills in order to get you to your head around the material. Because unfortunately, in undergrad, you were taking survey classes, most likely. You were taking, if you were a history major, you were taking a class about the Civil War or European history from the 20th century. You weren't taking a class all about history from the beginning of time up until yesterday. And in law school, that's really what you're taking. You're taking contracts, all-encompassing courses of torts and property. And to try to slog your way through that material, relying on the cramming material, like the way you might have crammed or studied in college, it's not going to work out well for you. So, from my standpoint, where I would want a kid, to be, or our pipeline of practice students, I should say, and forgive me if I called you a kid, but like I said, most of you all have less gray hair than me. So, you are you're just like my kids. I would want you to be in the midst of starting your outlines. I think that you should really have started a flow. If you've gotten the emails from us on the calendar and the alerts, you should have gotten. You should be in the process of having started outlining at this point.
Right.
Right. But again, that's the only reason why I would want you to start that now, rather than many of your classmates will wait until the middle of November, or God bless them, Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving break. If you start at that point, it's just going to be too late. It's going to be hard for you really to get to that level of mastery that you really need to be at.
Right.
So that's where I think you should be. But again, I didn't want to cut you off. I was just echoing back at you.
Oh yeah, no, and I totally agree. I mean, I think for me around this time, I first wanted to even know what an outline looks like. And obviously there are many resources out there to sort of get already prepared outlines and whatnot. I mean, the most important thing is for you to do it yourself. I know there's some people that sort of just like use already prepared outlines for one reason or the other. What I found helpful was still, if other people have outlines that are good outlines, yeah, you could use them, but I think start from scratch and prepare your own. I mean, use them and leverage what you think you can from them, but there's so much value, I think, from doing your own outline. Almost something that you create and then you mold, because it's going to change from day one until the last one before the exam. And it's pretty amazing to see how it's transformed from the beginning until the end. And again, there's a lot of value, because doing the outline yourself is basically studying for the exam. And like Don was saying, like if you start now, you're still basically studying for the exam that's a few weeks away. And I know that at this time of the semester, I mean, the professors have covered a lot of material, but there's still some material that still, needs to be covered. And so, I would say as you start your outlines, to the extent that you have any questions or you come across topics that haven't yet been covered, just put a placeholder, highlight it to come back to it, use the professors. I know the professors have office hours and whatnot, use that time. So I guess, Don, in response to that first question, you definitely want to start outlining and do it yourself.
Right. And I wholeheartedly agree in that as well. I think that there's no better way for you to master material than creating your own outline. We do talk about the use of proven outlines, and if you guys remember from Law Preview, a proven outline has three qualities, right? It's an A outline, it's written for your professor, and it's using the same casebook. And if you can use that, like Kwesi said, it's a good roadmap for you in either creating your own, or the way I used to use them is that would be the skeletal outline that I would then go through and fact check and be like, okay, you got an A, how come you didn't get an A plus? What's the matter with you? And then go through and find out, oh, they didn't put in this rule, or they misstated the rule, or they didn't have hypotheticals, or they didn't include nuggets the professor was really interested in. So that's yet another way, in terms of the outlining. But let's talk. I mean, you guys are probably the students, and I encourage you guys to ask questions. So don't be shy. You got two people here for an hour who our only desire is to help you guys. So if you have questions, pipe up and send them in. But imagine about this time, those of you who smoke are smoking like 10 packs a day. Those of you who are not smoking are considering it because the stress level is like through the roof. So in terms of time management, Kwesi, like what did you do? Like how did you balance it all? You were living in Iowa, so you weren't missing out on much fun, I would imagine. But like you were Yeah, you had to get all this stuff done, whether it's your daily prep or your outlining, exam prep. The legal research and writing assignments, if you recall, are like they're due next month. So it's sort of like everything is starting to come down on them at once. How did you manage your time? How did you manage the stress?
That's a good question. I remember. Every day I would list what I had to do for that day. And I was pretty rigid about it and really disciplined about going by that sort of like, timeline of, okay, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do by this time or day and whatnot. And as exams were like getting closer, I spent more time outlining and obviously, like preparing for the exam more so than necessarily preparing for class. I still had to read the cases and prepare for class, but it was more of kind of like skimming the cases or knowing as much, like enough to give like an intelligent answer or somewhat of a quasi-intelligent answer. But at the end of the day, your grades are not going to be based on how responsive. I guess some grades maybe, but for the most part, it's going to be based on how you did on the exam. And so it's just like allocating more time to outlining and the extent that you can studying that outline, more so than necessarily spending so much time reading all the cases and getting ready for class. As I mentioned before too, I remember there were times when I would really take advantage of the professor's office hours. And so to the extent that whatever I needed to do during the day, I had like pending questions or something that I didn't understand, I would put on that list, like time where like, the professor's office hours were open. And I would make it a point, to go there during that time and make sure my question was answered or something that I didn't understand. And then I'd go back to my outline and update my outline based on that response. Luckily for me, my wife lived 2 hours away, so it was just me in an apartment. And I don't drink, I don't smoke, so. And I'm so like a non-traditional law student at that time. I worked like for 9 years before going back to law school. And so I didn't really, the whole like going out and, Iowa City was like a party town, and that just didn't, I guess, jive with me. And so I thought that was helpful too, because I would go to school, come back, eat or do whatever, and then just get back to the books. And again, getting closer to exam time, that was even more important for me. So that's how I sort of like manage my time.
Yeah, I would say, and then Courtney, I see your question. I'm gonna answer it because it's a great question. I think you got to remember a couple of things. First off, without putting too much pressure on you, it's really all about your first semester grades, right? If we can knock it out of the park your first semester, it's almost impossible mathematically to catch you. So like you really want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to maximize your performance on the exams, as Kwesi said. For that, time management is going to be crucial here because time is the commodity that you trade in law school. That is the only thing. And if you're looking at people who do well in law school versus people who don't do well, I would say the biggest distinguishing factor is how they use their time. And it's not about how much time it is, because I saw plenty of people spend 12, 13, 14 hours in the library in law school and not be on law review, because it was a matter of they were putting in hours, but they weren't really smart hours. And then I see people who did 10 or 12 hours, between class and in the library, and then, made sure that they had time to go work out, go for a run, burn off some stress, get a good night's sleep, because, all this stuff, none of this stuff is going to be, is going to work for you if you walk into your final exam period sick. it's overlooked by most students, but the fact that you went to that you weren't a big part of your QSA, I wasn't either. It played to my advantage because, I was living in Albany, which is not very conducive to, it's very conducive to studying. It's pretty gray and cold in the winter. The library was like light and warm. I felt like I got a vitamin D shot, when I walked in the door. So, that was a good thing. So really managing your time is going to be critical, guys. And, if you again, that's sort of why in law preview, having you regimented and putting, you on a calendar, is a lot more for you, simply because you just want to know what you have to do and get it done. So Courtney, your question about, when do we balance, preparing for class versus, competing obligations with respect to exams and your legal research and writing assignments. That's a great question. I echo what Kwesi said, that, at the end of the day, your classroom performance, while important, is not nearly as important as your performance on that 3 or 4 hour exam at the end of the semester, because that's going to be determinative of your grade. Similarly, your legal research and writing assignments are important, very important. It's probably the most important class you're going to take in law school, but for the most part, many schools don't give them a lot of credit in your GPA. So if you're looking to sort of game it, right, and sort of game the system, if your legal research and writing class is in the memo that you have due next month, or you probably have a brief, a motion for summary judgment briefs due sometime in November, and if it's worth 10 or 15% of a 2-credit legal research and writing class, but you have a 4-credit contracts class, in December, I know we all went to law school because we are horrible at math, but let me just tell you right now, the legal research and writing assignment is not nearly as important as your 4-credit contracts class in your weighted GPA.
Right.
So you want to be smart. You want to use all, and that doesn't say that you're going to completely blow off legal research writing in order to kill your contracts exam. There's time to do all of that, and get it all done and do it well. It's just that approaching law school almost scientifically, almost methodically and mechanically, as boring, as bad as that seems, for students who don't have that kind of work ethic where they can sort of distinguish between what's important, what's not important. Let's get the stuff that's not important done earlier and get it off our plate, and always with an eye towards doing the best job we can as to what's really important. So hopefully that answers your question. I think you're going to be reading and briefing cases up until the last day of your classes, because hope is not a really good strategy for your first semester exams. You can't just walk into your first semester exams and be like, well, I didn't read all those cases and I didn't really, prepare for that section of the course. I hope it's not on the exam. That's a surefire way to become disappointed in February when grades get released. But I think that you have to be judicious in the sense that, if you're following the law preview calendar and you're keeping up with, the 12-hour days and you're doing this, the cumulative review on Saturdays and, outlining on Sundays or vice versa, you're in a good position. You should be in a really good position not to have to cut out certain things in an effort to make sure that you have time to study. There's 24 hours in a day, guys, all right? And there's a Starbucks on every corner. So you guys, it's just a matter of, and I know that right now it seems like, it's one more day of slogging through this, and these days go so slow, but I promise you that the last thing you want to do is get to the end of December and look back and be like, I really could have done more. The last thing you want to be in law school during your first year is outworked. And, working hard and working smart is the name of the game. I think that covers, it covers the outlining, and it definitely covers the biggest mistake that classmates made was just freaking wasting time. They didn't really understand how the exams were going to be structured and how all-encompassing the questions would be. Testing every aspect of your knowledge of a particular substantive area, like of contracts, whether it was the consideration doctrine or whether it was damages. It's all in there, and you can't just pick and choose. So students who sort of wasted time around the middle of October, or I know that some schools have breaks, in October, and they go home. Yeah, and I'm like, what are you, crazy? Like, this is not the time to be like, going to Cancun with your friends. Though it sounds like, actually, don't go to Mexico at all right now. I mean, it seems like a pretty dangerous decision. But regardless of that, like, you should really be, just focusing on making the best use of your time. Let me just answer one more question here. Let's see. What would you suggest of any best practices finishing the outlines prior to the material being covered in the course? That's a good question. So the question there is, how do you, complete your outlines when you haven't done all the material? And, my suggestion there is that if you're doing, if you're following the schedule that we laid out for you guys, you're doing your outlines on a rolling basis. You shouldn't be outlining that far ahead. And by the time Thanksgiving break comes around, and your professors are starting to wrap up their classes, and you have that, that reading period that's about to start, you should be in a good position to be finishing your outlines in tandem with the material that you're covering in class. I don't know. Did you feel the same way or find the same thing?
Yeah. I totally feel the same way. Yeah. I mean, I think once you sort of like started that outlining process, you should, and again, it's a moving process, right? So you shouldn't feel too much concerned about falling behind or anything like that, so long as you consistently keep updating it. And I mean, the benefit of being able to sort of like finish it up towards the end with, so like the last chapter materials, that, those materials are fresh in your mind. And so, if it happens to be on the exam, it is on the exam. But, so, I mean, if you want to, finish it before the material is covered, I mean, I guess that's fine. But I just don't want, I wouldn't want to, I guess, spend that much time right now, whereas, I could use that time trying to do something else that's going to be more beneficial me on the exam than trying to cover material.
Right, and more impactful. I hear exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Stephanie, if you haven't been following the law preview schedule, is it too late to start following it? No. I mean, it's better late than never. Jump in. I would encourage you to, really, really focus on that cumulative review that we discussed during the week, during the week of law preview, where you're working on materials in different media, so like using flashcards or reviewing your notes, taking practice questions on particular topics that you're already covering. It's all about practice on that stuff. But no, you can still get in. You could still pop into the law preview calendar, and start it. I mean, the fact of the matter is, guys, like, do I want you guys to have started your outlines on the 1st of October? Yes, absolutely. Are you doomed and destined to fail because you haven't yet? No. But my advice to you is do it now, and don't wait until November 1st, because November 1st might be too late, my friends. And I would rather you be, the Army has the saying, what's the saying? Where we can face anything, so we prepare for everything. Like, that's sort of how you walk into your law school exams. If you want to really limit your anxiety, and feel in control of this process, my advice to you is to be over-prepared when you're walking into your fall semester exams.
Uh-huh.
Did you join a study group, Kwesi?
Yes and no. Yes, because yes. I mean, actually, I did. I had a group of friends that we would get together and study and whatnot. I say no because just study groups doesn't just usually work for me. And so what I did was I made sure that I knew the material and I had done my homework and studied before the study group discussions. And what I found was it was really helpful because there was always some aspect of some issue or some topic that I did not know or did not understand it in that way. If it wasn't for that study group, there was something new that always came out from study groups, and so I think my advice would be, even if study groups don't work for you, I think there's some benefit to it because people see things in different ways, and you may learn something new, or at least find about like an issue that you didn't think about that may trigger you asking the professor, going back to the professor and asking additional questions. So yeah, to the extent that study groups works for you, go ahead and do it. Even if it doesn't, I would still advise it because there are certain benefits to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I would say to, see, I'm not a big study group guy. I was a rugged individualist. But I was always sort of concerned that, how the hell does Quessy know the answer better than me? Like, he's just learning it just like me. Like, how am I going to learn? But I do see the benefit of sitting down and talking to folks and talking through the material, having already studied it yourself. I think that what you described is perfect, is you go in with a really good foundational knowledge, and then you sort of just, you brainstorm with people as to whether that knowledge is, holds up, and is reasonable. And
exactly.
And test your analysis. But, if you're looking to join a study group to go and study, I think that is a huge waste of your time. I think that, as I mentioned during the Week of Law preview, study groups quickly dissolve into therapy sessions, about why did I go to law school in the first place? Why is this professor so mean to us? What does this all mean in the larger scheme of life? All that kind of stuff. And that's all that kind of thinking, though, I don't know. I mean, I just don't think it's helpful. So
no, I'm sorry to cut you off, John, but I just want to echo what you just said. I mean, I don't use study groups as your primary way of studying. No, you study on your own. You do your homework, and then if you want to talk about it with friends, that's fine. But you should definitely study on your own before.
Right. I did, and I do mention this during the Week of Law preview. I think a really good use of the study group is at the end of the semester when you guys are taking practice exams, because most of those exams won't have a model answer. And if you get Quessy and me and 4 other people in the room together and actually sit down under test-like conditions, give it 4 hours, everyone writes their own exam, and then exchange answers, that's a really good use of your time. Because at that point, then you can look at Quessy and be like, whoa, Quessy, like, how did I miss that one? Is that an issue I should really have spotted and addressed? And, and he can look at you and be like, whoa, man, you're dumb. You're going to fail. Like, I feel really good about myself. Or, wow, I feel really bad about myself. Like, you're really smart, But at least at that point in the semester, that's not studying. That's just sort of using your classmates as a sounding board, and sort of as a way to sort of, because the worst part about the first year, I don't know if you felt this way, but like the worst part for me for first year is you're working into your first semester exams not knowing how you're doing, right? You're sort of like, you think you're doing okay, but you're being graded on a curve, and what does that really mean? And how does that really, how will that curve be set? And will I be in the middle of that curve? Will I be on the far left of that curve or the far right of that curve? And we're using a study group to sort of take an exam and sort of compare answers. We'll give you a good judge, right before the exam, like, hey, you know what? I've mastered this material. I feel pretty confident. Out of these 4 people, I'm probably the top 1 or 2 people. So I should feel pretty good about myself in that respect. I think that's a really good use of your time. Maurice, you have a question about how do you approach outlining if you're a little behind? I don't know, get off this phone call and start outlining? I mean, again, I don't want to be too rude about it, but it's like, again, like there's really no substitute for just sitting down and getting things done. I think there's actually a book called Getting Things Done, right? Like where it's just like, okay, we've got a problem. I think what too many law students do and too many people do in life is they sort of wait for the problem to approach them. And I think that, at this point in your lives, I think that, and this is advice I'll give my kids as well, is you should be running towards your problems. Like if you see a problem in the distance, you shouldn't just wait for that problem to become bigger and bigger and bigger. You should run at it and try to knock it down. So to the extent that, you might be a little bit behind in outlining, again, I'm not here to sound the fire alarm that you're doomed. That's not the point of this at all. I think there's plenty of time to get it done. It's just a matter of actually sitting down and budgeting the time to do it. Now, if you haven't been budgeting the time, if you haven't been following our calendar up until this point, now's the time to start investing a little bit more time in doing that and just getting it done. Because otherwise, there's no magic bullet here in law school except for who's willing to work the hardest and the smartest, right?
Right.
How did you incorporate practice exams into your routine, Quessy? Did you do a lot of them?
I did. And I guess after this question, I think someone else has a question, but I'll go ahead and answer your question. What I did was I to the extent that they were available, because some of the classes have old exams like in the library, or some of the professors have them. I actually even Googled some of them, from other schools and whatnot, and I found some, and I did that early on. And what I did was, I didn't actually take the exam or anything, but I just kind of read through what the questions were asking, just to kind of get a feel or a sense of what a law school exam looks like. But I only attempted to actually answer the questions at the end of the semester when I was pretty comfortable with my outline. That was when I was like, it would be a waste of my time to try to answer these questions when I don't even know what the material, or I guess I don't fully understand the material. And even at the end of the semester when I was, actually answering the questions, I guess I probably should have timed my, kind of simulate an actual exam. I did not do that. But I would outline what my answer would look like, as if I was actually writing the exam, if that makes sense. And then I would go to the professor and talk to professors about it. I would talk to my friends about it. And so that's how I guess I utilized, old practice exams.
Right. Yeah, I think that, obviously those are the, it's, if you haven't figured it out by now, you're going to quickly figure it out that, the exams that you're going to face in your, at the end of the semester are not testing your knowledge of the law. They pretty much assume that you have the knowledge requisite to sit down for the exam. What they're really attesting is your mastery of the rules and your ability to apply them, right? So the more practical exams that you can take, I really believe, that it's only a benefit for you at this point. Did you want to answer a question? I think, Ms. Riggins has a question.
So
regarding
that question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
No, guys, you can read it off.
Yeah. So the question is that would we recommend switching study groups if there's one person who's consistently dominating the discussion, even though you may feel like you are still learning? So that's a good question. I think it goes back to you doing your homework and learning the material. Because I've had study groups like that where one person is just dominating, everything. And sometimes it's a waste of your time. And I would hate that you haven't studied the material. You go, you get into a group and somebody's just spinning out whatever they want to say. And yeah, you find some of it helpful, but most of it not. You were really wasting your time sitting in that discussion. You're better off, just studying on your own and not trying to figure out the material on your own. And so I think it goes back to what we were saying. As long as you done your homework and studied the material, I think there are ways to sort of work around, whoever this individual is. And sometimes you don't, if the person's going to be there, you guys are meeting for an hour, and the person's going to be there. Maybe you don't go for like the first 15 minutes and you go for the last 45 minutes. And the first 15 minutes you may have spent reviewing your own material. You just got to be smart about time and doing things that would add the most value to your time. So that's what I have to say about that question. I don't know if Don, you have anything to add.
No, I think that that's fine. I also think that I mean, that's a really good. I wouldn't even thought of that, but like that's actually really good advice. Like, go 15 minutes after the group has already started and let the guy talk himself out or herself out, and then
right.
and then continue on with the discussion. Ms. Riggins, you also have a question about using practice questions from Quimby. Look, I got to be honest with you. I'm a big fan of using practice questions wherever and whenever you can get them, because the more the merrier. Ideally, the best indicator of what your exam will look like, although the question won't be the same, clearly, is the practice questions or the model exams that your professors put on reserve, whether online or at the library. But other than that, I mean, like, you should be using every resource, whether it's the Law on a Flash flashcards. I know Barbary has this new thing called study keys. Anything that's going to test not just your black letter knowledge of the rule, but your ability to apply those black letter elements and principles to a hypothetical fact pattern where that rule survives or fails. That's going to be the key for you in prepping for your exams. Because at the end of the day, these professors are not that original. And they're very smart, but they're also kind of lazy. And there's only so many ways that they can ask a question. And, you might see, a similar, question, even though the hypothetical is different. Like, it's a bus accident on the Quimby question. And when you get to the actual exam, it's a train accident. It's the same principle that's being tested. So, the more exposure you can get to hypothetical fact patterns, I don't care where you get them, but you should be doing as many as possible in your review, in that cumulative review. What did you like? Any major tips that you had for writing a successful exam answer? Like, what was your big thing? Like, what was your secret sauce when you were like walking into your exam, Quessy, and you're like, nobody else knows what I'm doing here? What did you do?
Okay, so this is what I did. So obviously you have your outline, right? And when you start your outline, it's most likely going to be somewhat detailed. And then, so that's like outline number one. Then you have outline number two, which is somewhat of like a shortened, more brief, concise version of outline number one. And outline number two is just kind of like high level, kind of, high level topics and just like bullet pointer stuff. What I did was I did like an outline number three, which was basically just like one word topics, like no detailed definitions, nothing. It was, and I called it like my checklist. I actually have one up on my computer now. I put it up. I called it like an issue checklist. And so, for example, the one that I have now is a contracts checklist. And so I have the 4 different columns that I have. So like in column one, I have a big, like heading called formation. Under formation, I have one bullet point, mutual assent. I have offer, and then under offer, I have binding commitment, definite terms, communication, objective, and whatever it is. And the purpose of this sort of like issue checklist is to make sure that as I'm reading the hypothetical, if I identify that, there's an issue about offer termination. Okay. And I look back at my checklist and then I see, do I have like a heading called offer termination? And under offer termination, I want to make sure that all the issues that I have under offer termination, that I look back at the hypothetical and see if those issues are in there. And if they're in there, I want to make sure that I address all of them. I mean, I know that some issues have more points than others, but this issue checklist was really helpful because at the end of the day, I just didn't want to walk out of the exam room and be like, oh, I forgot to identify this issue. So it was really a tool that I used to make sure that as much as possible, I was able to identify all the issues within a given, area of law or subject or what have you. So that was my sort of like the thing that I did that I don't know that everybody did, but I found that really helpful.
Yeah, I found what I used to do was, a couple of just very basic, things that you otherwise wouldn't really think. Because again, for most folks who are going to be sitting in your class with you taking your contracts exam, this is the first time they've ever sat down and taken a contracts exam, and they're going to see that it's a quote-unquote essay exam and harken back to their political science class or their history class from undergrad and start writing an essay. And the essays that you're writing, in law school are not like any essays that you've written before for an examination. So there's, again, I would suggest, and I highly recommend that you take a look at, a couple things. One is you guys all have access to the online exam taking strategies workshop, which is the stuff that we covered on Friday during the Law Preview live session. It's all available for you guys free of charge in the Law Preview online module. And I would highly recommend spending that 3 hours over the next month or so, going back and understanding how to really write a law school exam and how the essays are not, there's no thesis statement, there's no overarching conclusion at the end of your thing. It's really just identifying a dispute with really good road marks as to what the dispute is, what the rules that you're applying, what your analysis is for the factual, legal, or policy arguments that you're going to encounter, and then ultimately what the conclusion is for that dispute. And then, boom, like it never even happened, you move on to the next dispute.
Right.
So, the exams are like, I used to call it writing an outline form, right, where I'd have a one-sentence paragraph that identifies the dispute. I'd have a two-sentence paragraph that identifies the rule or rules that I'm going to be applying. And then, the major meat of my answer is all of my analysis, my arguments that I'm crafting either for or against the application of that rule. And then ultimately a conclusion as to whether that rule survives or fails. But that was my thing. And the other thing is, if you have an opportunity to type your exam, type it. There's plenty of statistics and studies out there that show that kids who type a law school exam do better. First off, it's easier for professors to read, and second, at this point, most of you guys type faster than you handwrite. And these are time pressured exams, so you don't want to be wasting time on the exam, writing your answers. All right. So, yes. Sorry.
I was just going to add that as far as identifying the issues and analyzing the issues, I think you guys have to kind of figure out what issues to spend the most time on, because I know sometimes professors draft questions and they may be like one issue that you identified, but it may only have a few points. Like they don't want you to focus on that. So, and I mean, you guys can kind of like, figure it out because it's sometimes you can see it on the face of the question. Sometimes it's not. But I think you have to be able to build a skill of knowing, oh, this is the primary issue, and I'm gonna, spend, more time there, more so than say like a minor issue. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yep. That's a good point. So Maurice asked, do you do attack outlines for a 24-hour take-home exam? So first off, I think what you should do is you should revolt, all right? And you should get every student in that school to say, like, this is complete and utter BS that you gave us a 24-hour take-home exam, because that is probably the meanest thing that a professor can probably do to a class of students ever, because frankly, like if you're sitting in a classroom for 4 hours, you've got 4 hours, and you can see everybody else, either working or finishing early, and you can devote the amount of time. With a 24-hour take-home exam, I have to sit there and wonder whether Quessy is spending 23 hours and 50 minutes on writing this exam answer. It's cruel. It's unusual punishment. I think it should be constitutionally banned. And I think that law students should stand up and say that that's complete and utter BS. That said, would I do an attack outline for a 24-hour take-home exam? I think so. I don't think I'm going to prepare for it any differently. I think the part of the attack outline for me really meant taking my 130-page outline and boiling it down into 4 or 5 pages that, like as Quessy said, like really high level.
Right.
Like what do I really think is going to be on this exam, and and then internalizing that so then I could go and sit in an exam and take it. I still think it's good. It's a good practice, even if you're going to have a take-home exam where presumably you have access to everything at your disposal to look at, because it'll at least keep you focused and keep you going. But again, I feel bad for you, Maurice. That's not an enviable position. But although I guess it could be worse. It could be like a 72-hour take-home exam, right? And then then you just have to start doing like crazy drugs to stay up for 3 days straight to make sure that you're not being bested by somebody else down the hall who's smoking meth. I guess I have no idea. All right, so Quessy, let me ask you this: did you have like a game day routine, like for every one of your exams?
The only thing I would say to that is I try to go to bed early the day before, and then I would wake up pretty early, irrespective of the time of the exam on the day of the exam, and the main purpose of that was just I would have that sort of like attack outline or high level outline, and then just go over it really real quickly. And at that point, it's just a matter of taking care of the self. I mean, it's like Don said early in this webinar. It's really a mental, both mental and like physical preparation for the exam. And I think you owe it to yourself to just stay healthy and exercise and eat well and just be as healthy as you can before the exam.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, getting a good night's sleep the day before the exam, not talking to any of your classmates the day before the exam, those were things that I really did. I tried to avoid getting sucked into conversations, at 6 p.m. the night before the the exam that starts at 9 a.m. with your study group and have them start sowing the seeds of doubt in your mind. If you've done the work, if you've put in the work up until the night before the exam, you really shouldn't need any other. You shouldn't be staying up. Certainly shouldn't be staying up until the wee hours studying. I would recommend turning on Bravo TV or a game or something just to get your mind off of the exam and get a good night's sleep. My exam day routine, like of the exam, I would get up early as well. Quessy, I would go running. I would have a huge breakfast, like a lot of protein, and because I would want to make sure that like the last thing I'm going to be doing while I'm sitting in that exam is feeling hungry. Like I want to be as focused as possible.
Yeah.
And then I also I had read like back in somewhere in law school that like there were studies done like you wear blue and you feel cooler during exams. So like I'm superstitious. I'll do crazy ass shit. If I think it's even gonna, if it's not gonna hurt me to wear blue, like certainly it's may not be the most slimming color on me, but I don't care. At that point, I'm like I'm wearing blue.
Yeah.
And I would wear like layers too. So regardless of how hot or cold it got in that room, I could take off a layer. I could put on a layer. Like you sort of want to have anything that could otherwise be a distraction to you. During that 3-hour or 4-hour exam, you want to take that variable and just make it a non-variable, it doesn't even compute. And I would say the other thing I would say on the exam day routine was I never ever talked to kids after the exam. All right, I took that exam, I handed it in, and I was focused on my next exam. What's done is done. You can talk. There's the exams that are written. They're written in a style that often, not often, always, I would say, there's really two great answers that could come out of a hypothetical fact pattern. Quessy could have an exam that comes out in favor of party A, and I could have an exam that comes out in favor of party B, and we both could get, really good grades on an exam, because it's not about the overarching conclusion, it's about the analysis. And,
right.
The last thing I want to do is either have Quessy tell me, like, to make himself feel good, like, oh, yeah, I killed it on this, and this is what I found, and I'll be like, oh, Christ, did I not, maybe I should have done this differently, and then it sows the seeds of doubt, and now I've got to focus on torts after having taken the contracts exam that Quessy's basically telling me I blew, and now I have to focus on my next exam. There's no benefit that comes out of talking about an exam afterwards.
Right.
So, you hand that exam, I used to look at it like I'm pulling the plug on the bathtub, like letting all the knowledge that I had about contracts, like, flow out of my head and go down the drain, and I got to fill up that tub now with torts and get ready for torts, and get ready for the next exam. All right, so we're actually at 1 hour and 1 minute right now, and I want to ask you one more question, Quessy. Looking back now, okay, and knowing now what's important and what's not important, what do you wish you did differently during the fall semester of your first year?
So the first thing that I would say is I wish I did not freak out as much as I did about exams. Like I said, I was out of school for 9 years, and this whole law school thing was just totally new to me, and I'm sure to many first-year law students. And it was just overwhelming, and I think I let that, I guess, take over me like way too much. As long as you're doing your homework and you're studying, you will be fine. And so I would say I wish I had more control over it. I was just so overwhelmed about it. I did not exercise. I was extra stressed. And so anything that I could have done to reduce or I guess eliminate that feeling in me would have gone. I think honestly, I would have. I did decently in my first semester. I actually did better in my second semester than the first. But had I, like, if I was able to find a way to control that stress, I think I would have done way better. So if there's anything in you guys' lives that will make you feel better, I would definitely say do that. And again, don't be overwhelmed by this whole process. You know yourselves. You're gonna work hard and do your homework, and you will be fine. So yeah, that's what I wish I would have changed.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so weird. I do remember. And this wasn't first semester. I'd done really, really well in my first semester, much to the surprise of myself, and pretty much anybody who knew me. And I do remember going to my second semester exam, and my last exam was a 6-credit, 6-hour contract exam. So it was basically a full year class. We covered material from, we were sitting in the second week of May, and covering material all the way from August, when we first started the class. And there was no final, there was no midterm, it was just this one exam. It was worth 6 credits, and that was the exam that I was taking. And I do remember distinctly this feeling of dread and foreboding that if anybody told me that I could quit law school, despite knowing that I had done really, really well up until that point, and there would be no shame in it, I probably would have quit. And I think what I would do differently now is I would have embraced that experience and taken all that stress, and had a little bit more faith in myself, because I ended up getting an A+ on the exam, which was great, right? But law school is a really good way to just start questioning everything you think you know and all the doubts you may have in yourself. And, looking back now, it's like, wow, as long as you're putting in the effort, right? As long as you're putting in the, you're being honest with yourself and you're putting in the effort and you're putting forth your best effort. You shouldn't, all these exams should be almost, you should like run towards these exams and be like, oh my God, I can't wait to show you what I learned this year, because it's been so much.
Right.
And, I think that, having that kind of faith in yourself and embracing that kind of having that attitude would have made me a lot less stressed as I walked into my exams. We all know that there's a lot riding on these things. And, I think at the end of the day, the only thing you'd want to look back at, at the end of this semester or the end of the first year entirely is like, hey, damn it, I did my best, right? And what the grades are going to be the grades. But if I've done my absolute best, and I can honestly look myself in the mirror and be like, there was nothing else for me to study. There was no other practice questions for me to take. There was no other way for me to, practice and or master this material. I did my best. Then, you can walk into your second year probably with really good grades and, getting ready to get recruited in OCI, but also with your head held high, even if you didn't, So I guess I would have changed my attitude and not been so stressed about the exam as something to loathe, and I would have looked at the exams as something to like really be excited to go and show what I've learned, So we have another somebody. Stephanie said that she's having trouble finding the exam taking strategies workshop on the Law Preview online module. So here's my recommendation, Stephanie. I'm actually going to reply right now. My email address is don.mccauley@lawpreview.com. And if you're having trouble finding it, just send me an email, and I will forward you along to my colleague in operations, and she will get you all set up. You should have access within your user console. All right? So I'm sending that out to you, and I'm also sending it out to all the other folks if you guys have any other questions about, where to find stuff. But Kwesi, you want any closing remarks, or you just want to let these guys go and now start either,
just two quick comments. Just echoed Don's comment about law school is about doing your best. So that's one. Second is, one thing I did during taking exams was I never took a bathroom break, because I thought people go to the bathroom like how do you have time to go to the bathroom and come back? So I never did. That's just me. So I just wanted to point that out there.
Well, I mean, and Kwesi also was wearing an adult diaper, so like it kind of. But that would be the extreme, Kwesi. We don't want that, okay? But I would agree with you. Like there were people who literally got up, and I was like, where the hell are these people going? Like, do they realize what this game is all about? It's sort of like walking off the field, like in the middle of the third quarter,
man.
and like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna grab Chick-fil-A. Like, what?
Yeah, man.
I don't care how hungry you are.
I mean, I know. Yeah. I mean, I had food, but I tried to not drink too much water.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not saying people should do that.
Well, I am. So I'll take it there. Okay.
All right.
So guys, listen. You have my contact information. You have the support of Pipeline of Practice behind you. We've got a board of 25 people who are not only folks who are young enough to remember what it was like to be in your position, but are there who really want to leave the ladder down and help you guys. So to the extent that you have questions, reach out to me directly, or you can email any one of the members of the board. If you go to our board of directors page, I think there's a contact list now, or at least some of the folks have put up profiles where you can contact them and ask questions and know that somebody's got your back here, and somebody really wants to see you do really, really well this year. All right. Kwesi, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know that you bill out at what's your billable rate right now?
$2,000.
What? $2,000 an hour? Are you kidding me?
Oh, sorry. No, I thought you said for the year. No. 2,000 meaning 2,000 hours for the year. No,
Oh, okay.
I'm at 350 or something.
350, even 350 is a lot of money. I got to hang up. I don't want you to send me a bill. But 2,000, I literally almost fell out of my chair. I was like, who the hell am I talking to?
No. I misunderstood. Sorry about that. All right, cool.
You got it. All right, guys.
Right,
good luck,
later.
okay, and stay in touch. Thanks again, Quessy. I really appreciate you volunteering your
All
time.
right.
Volunteering being the operative word there. All right? Thanks,
Not a
man.
problem. All right. Yeah, bye.
Bye, guys.